Welcome and greetings to Logo School's webinar on adolescent mental health and learning during COVID-19. I'm your host, Brian Gist. I am a therapeutic and academic support coordinator at Logo School, and it is my pleasure and honor to introduce the panel in which we'll be discussing today's topics. First up is Stephanie Coker. She is the Director of Admissions and Licensed Clinical Social Worker at Logo School. We
Hi.
have Nate Sykes, who is our Director of Athletics. We have Ellie Rosenbat, who is our Individual Instruction Educator. And we have Robert Becker, who is our Associate Clinical Director.
Oh.
So let's begin. According to recent polls, 77% of parents feel that their children's education will be impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. Falling behind and missing out on learning and lack of socialization are among the biggest concerns parents have for their children. At Logos, we work with students who have experienced trauma and who have struggled academically every day. As COVID-19 has closed schools around the country, we have worked tirelessly to support our students and families as a way of life has altered dramatically. Let's start the conversation with you, Robert, and some questions about home life and how that has changed drastically over these past few months. What can parents do to improve family dynamics during the extended times that we are together?
Well, during this time when we're all stuck at home and have very few places to go outside of the house, it's really important that families rely on their communication first and foremost to make things as easy as possible, build those dynamics. Having an open, honest line of communication within the family is going to be key to understanding what everybody needs and what everybody wants and what's going on with anybody. When you have that open line of communication, you have the opportunity to really set some boundaries within the family dynamic and find ways to be patient with each other and to learn patience. These are all opportunities that students have when they're at school, and now that everybody's at home more frequently, we see these opportunities coming up at home, and if taken advantage of, we find that that family dynamic can become a lot smoother and easier to live with.
Thank you. Stephanie, I wanted to turn it over to you for a follow-up.
I would agree with everything that Robert said. The only thing I would add is that, parents really need to take care of themselves during this time so that they can take care of their families. So they just need to focus on their own health and well-being as well as their children's.
I want to turn it over to Nate. Nate, kids are spending much more time indoors these days. What can be done to keep them active or to get them to go outside?
Parents, guardians, authority figures, you are the leaders of the system that your child operates in. So scheduling time to spend outside engaged in activity can be coordinated, as well as applying screen time restrictions. Today, especially today, in the midst of everything that's going on, it's so easy and normal to be in front of a screen. So combating this with structure may be a solution. Spending time together outside, bike riding, planting flowers, whatever, could be a tradition that is adopted. I know, especially dealing with the kids that we work with, doing something different and not necessarily comfortable may bring struggle. So struggle could be met with an acclimation period where you try transition techniques by spending time outside with electronics present. You could allow kids to play games that engage the physical environments, kind of like a Pokemon Go, and it could ease them into the outside environment and being active.
Thank you. Robert, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, all those are great ideas, and Nate comes with thousands of great ideas. But come summertime, as the weather is getting more hot and less comfortable to be outside, finding ways to entertain and interact within the household that doesn't include screens can be difficult. But now we have the opportunity with families staying at home more frequently to kind of re-envision the household and maybe turn things around and rearrange some things so that everyone can have their own space, or everyone can play in a big open room together, or a specific child's room or a specific parent's room. So kind of reimagining the layout of your house could provide opportunities for the families to do things that historically they haven't been able to do, and also giving options off screen for kids to take advantage of.
That's amazing in terms of reinventing the family. What are some strategies that parents can employ to help families focus on gratitude, resilience, and adaptability during COVID-19?
Well, again, I'm going to mention communication. That's going to be, I think, a response to a lot of the questions that come up. When you have that communication, it seems problems become less frequent, and happiness increases. But during these times, when you're communicating within the family system, it's important that you use positive language, highlighting positives as opposed to dwelling on negatives. You're now the child's sole role model.
Well, Robert, we'll come back to you just really briefly. Um, how can parents, I guess, and this question I'll pose it to Ellie right now, how can parents help their children be more connected socially with families and friends and other trusted adults while being required to adhere to social distancing requirements?
I think that kids right now are really have this desire to be around other people. And luckily we live in an age where technology is available.
Without the teacher,
I know that
without maybe some older.
oh, I know that we go back and forth between having technology and not wanting technology, and there is a good balance, but it's as simple as video games. Right now we have the ability to access multiplayer online games that our kids can be safe while interacting socially and collaboratively working with other children just on an online platform. Also, having a walk, going for a walk, taking a walk outside with a trusted group of friends. Maybe that's a picnic in the park. You can also do that with your family, right? It doesn't have to necessarily just be with kids, but these are all activities that allow for social distancing, but in a safe manner.
Definitely. Thank you, Ellie. Robert, I know we lost you for a minute, but I wanted you to see if you wanted to chime into that question about how can children be connected socially with friends, family, and other trusted adults.
Yeah, sorry about that. Never happened before, but of course, when it comes time to taping something, it's going to come up. I was just kind of hitting on that communication, the way you communicate and make sure it's positive, highlighting positives of your child or a student, and kind of help build them up. Tending to dwell on the negative makes it more difficult for everybody involved to stay positive. So if something negative is going on that needs to be addressed, address it quickly, move on, and find some more positives to continue to talk about. Because again, you're the role model now, and what you do, what kind of positive attitude or negative attitude you put out there, you can almost expect to get back from whoever is around. So making sure that you do that, highlighting rewards as opposed to punishment. These are all things that can really kind of help build a bond between families and children, families, adults and adults, that could possibly help to make things be a little bit easier for everybody to be around everybody for long periods of time.
Definitely. With dealing with COVID-19, we're experiencing a lot of trauma, from people experiencing loss. What can parents do to help their children, their adolescents deal with trauma from COVID-19?
Well, one of the first things I would suggest is kind of get educated on trauma. People become traumatized when their world becomes dangerous or unpredictable or out of control for them. In all three of those aspects we have with the COVID situation, there is clearly a sense of danger. Nobody really seems to have answers, so control is there and predictability is gone. So this is an opportunity for young people and adults to really kind of experience trauma and be dealing with it and not understand it. So my first piece of advice would be to get educated as best as possible. What does that look like? There's no one size fits all when it comes to trauma. So there's a list of different things that you could be looking out for. But once you become educated and you know what you're looking for, communication, again, bringing up communication is key. A lot of people are able to talk through traumatic situations, and for some, that's all the intervention is needed. But even if not, with that communication, you can then find out what next steps could be and where to go from there. So education and communication would be the first step in trying to identify and combat trauma within our children.
Definitely. Thank you. Stephanie, this next question is for you. If parents are seeing adverse behavior that is not typical of their adolescent, at what point should they become worried?
Well, I think, living in this uncertain time, everyone has excess worry right now. My best advice for parents is, parents know their children best. So if they have concerns, more than just a day that doesn't seem, normal for this particular time. I'm not talking about if their child just has one bad day or a couple bad days, but, if parents are concerned, I don't think they should ignore their concerns. I think that they should go to, if their child doesn't have a therapist or any mental health professionals already in the family system, the parents should start with their pediatrician or their family practitioner and just share their concerns and get educated and get feedback from a professional, as to whether, parents should be worried and what they should continue to look for, and just get some professional advice.
Definitely. Robert, do you have anything to add to that?
When you're dealing with negative behaviors, one of the first things you're going to look for is how disruptive to daily life it is. Obviously, the more disruptive, the more severe the behavior is. You may find that there's a more than one behavior that falls under that category. So once you've identified those behaviors, kind of prioritizing which one you want to address first, the most disruptive or debilitating to the family system would be the best place to start. And then just kind of focus on one of those behaviors at a time. You'll find that when you're dealing with a list of behaviors, sometimes when you focus on the most intense one and you kind of get that under control, things may start to fall in line with just that intervention on its own, and that list may shorten just by addressing the one behavior. But if not, then go down the list of behaviors as far as disruption, and just kind of try and knock them out as one by one as best as possible.
Thank you. Robert, this is another question. What if, they are already dealing with depression, anxiety, or other trauma before the pandemic?
Well, this is a situation where people with mental health are in a better place than people that may not have been suffering from mental health issues prior to this. With the students at Logos, all supports are already in place. We've already have therapeutic sessions lined up. We have group sessions, all kinds of supports that we are able to afford to our children. So for them, things are going to kind of stay the same. Topics of conversation may differ a little bit, but we're still there as therapeutic service providers to address whatever may be facing that student at the current time. So in this case, they started out a couple steps ahead of children that haven't typically had mental health issues. Right now, the social service industry is being really strained. Their resources are running thin. More people are seeking help than probably ever before. So in that sense, we have some students who are kind of fighting for resources, maybe just fractions of the resources that we've been able to provide for our students and maintain throughout this situation. So finding resources could be difficult, but there are a number of providers that are out there. And if you're starting to see some of those disruptive behaviors taking place on a consistent basis, it may be time to try and reach out to some of those to get some help and to see what different things can we do with the child to help them through the situation.
Thank you so much, Robert, and to everybody else on the panel. It's been very helpful for parents to understand how a child's behavior might be different at home and what signs parents should be watching before they get worried about the changes that they've seen. I'm going to shift gears and start thinking about academics. This school year was clearly impacted by the sudden shift to virtual or e-learning. Ellie, typically students experience the summer slide. What will be different this year?
So first off, many of us might not know the summer slide is like this loss of knowledge during the summer break. Lots of what we have done at Logos is a lot of these skill buildings to counteract that loss during our e-learning, and hoping that we won't have as much of a loss come fall. But there still will be this loss of academics because they're not in the classroom, they're not interacting with peers, they're not interacting with their teachers. It's going to happen. We just have to be prepared for it in the fall.
Definitely. Stephanie, to follow up, how will Logos, I guess, address the summer slide?
So Logos already has something in place. We are an 11-month school year. So our students are currently still in school and will be in school until the middle of July. So they're still being educated right now, virtually during this time, but Logos is set up all the time, and especially during this time, to continue to work with students individually in terms of, filling their learning gaps and trying to get them as caught up as possible to their grade level and to their ability.
Longer school might be something the kids don't like to see, but I guess it's something to keep them engaged. Ellie, looking forward, how will schools or educators address the potential learning loss when the next school year starts?
So I can't really speak for other schools, but I can address, in my classroom, it's an individualized experience. Across Logos' board, it's an individualized experience. So there is going to have to be individualization with our kiddos depending on what their struggles are. We have to focus on those struggles to then build the gaps within learning. Things that can be done within the classroom are something called scaffolding, which is just adding supports within the classroom to aid mastery of skills. And so the more skills that we can master, the more academic growth we will see within the classroom. This might be as simple as just giving a kid a different level of text, right? If everyone is reading The Great Gatsby in 10th grade, then maybe some students are given a lower level reading, but it's still the same book. Something that needs to be done is structure, routine, repetition to really ingrain and build on those skills to maintain their level of success throughout their high school career or any level of school career. And also allow choice in the classroom. Choice is a huge, huge deal. If a kid can choose between two activities but still work on the same skill, they're still working on the skill. It shouldn't matter what they're doing. And if they have a choice, then they have a little bit more ownership to it and will probably engage more in that activity. But no matter what, the beginning of the year, we will need to set some time aside to refresh what they might have been missing and to get them to the right point. And so hopefully these all will be put in place. I know in my classroom, this is what I will be doing to address those needs.
Solid points. Nate, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just like was stated, there will likely be a learning loss due to the quick transition to e-learning without proper practice. I know many students rejected the idea, and it's pretty understandable. So I feel continuing to provide online content and learning options once traditional schooling is underway may allow students to kind of reinforce the teachings by being able to assess material at their disposal. The combination of quality in-person education and online reinforcement may help bridge the gap that was created by this physical disconnect.
And Nate, you kind of really touched on e-learning and students rejecting it. If a student has struggled with virtual learning and now is behind in school, What can parents do to help them, or what are some coping skills that kids can employ to help
This is completely new. The virtual learning platform is completely new to many students, parents, and teachers. So flexibility to achieve the goal of learning is paramount. Compromising with kids and students can be a tricky action. You give them an inch, but doing so reasonably to meet the child or student where they're at in the time or season you're at is the answer. Summer is often considered the time you want to unwind and relax. But if you know that your child is going to be behind, attempting to infuse learning into the summer to catch up, would definitely benefit. But again, this would take flexibility and compromising. Otherwise, you may get complete rejection. I know I didn't want to do schoolwork in the summertime as a kid, but adjusting time of day learning is completed, the location or the overall environment so that it's conducive to production for this specific child, or some alterations that can be applied to help the process. Communicating concerns and issues with your supports, reaching out to teachers, therapists, or other experts can lead to needs getting met so that the student can learn and achieve. Working with the team that you have is key.
Definitely. Ellie, we established that e-learning has been a challenge, and many schools, school districts are going to be planning to reopen in the fall. But that doesn't mean that virtual learning is going to go away completely. What are some tips to help students who have had trouble transitioning to virtual learning and to be more successful going forward?
So Nate had mentioned the flexibility of our schedules in summer, and moving from summer to fall is going to be another transition, another hurdle that our kids are going to have to jump over. And so being able to give them the choice of maybe what time of day they're working on their work for e-learning is so important, but also keeping that in a structure and routine. I know kids say they don't like schedules and routines, but it does allow for less missing work because they're held a little bit accountable. But that doesn't mean they have to do work at 9 a.m. They can be doing work at 1 p.m. if that's really when they're most available to be engaged in their work. Something that I like to suggest to a lot of my students is a big calendar. Being able to write down your due dates when all of your assignments are due and having it in front of you and visible is huge, because then they see what is due on what day and how to keep themselves accountable for their work and when it's due and when it needs to be turned in. Like Nate said as well, asking your teacher. At Logos, we have teams for each individual student, right? They have their therapists, they have their teachers for all these different subjects. Utilize them. Ask for help the moment you start to struggle, because the more you wait to ask for help, the harder it's going to be to catch up. So utilizing those supports early and being able to advocate for your needs is huge. And then I know that some of our students might have IEPs or 504s. Teachers should be implementing their accommodations and modifications within the classroom. So those if they're not being upheld, you need to contact your teacher and your educators as quickly as possible so that you can say, my kid isn't getting their extended time. My kid isn't getting their audiobooks. How can we get these to our kids in a virtual world? It's quite simple, but it's sometimes hard to advocate for yourself. So advocating is key in this point.
Communication, I think, is the larger part of this whole discussion, which is important. Ellie, what resources are available to parents if their child is falling behind, especially in math and reading? And are any of them fun?
Okay, so there will be posted a list of resources as well after this, but a few that I just have jotted down. For English, there's No Red Ink, MobyMax, Newsela, News ELA, some people call it something different, spellingcity.com, and CommonLit. These are just a few sources that will help you with a wide range of needs, whether it's spelling, grammar, reading comprehension, reading speed, those kind of things. And math, I'm personally not one of the math teachers, but I have asked them for their resources. So I know they're really great. For Khan Academy, which I know is 100% a fantastic resource, Freckle, Math Facts Pro, and mathgames.com. I know my kids that when I did teach math, they loved Math Games. It is interactive. It's 100% gaming online, and it'll keep their attention. So all of these resources will be able to address certain topics and bridge the gaps of their learning.
Definitely. Nate, do you have any additional resources?
No, just as shown, teachers have a wealth of resources available to give out. When Ellie was speaking and had me taking notes, did she say Khan Academy? Teachers also, I know I do, still have available all the resources that I use during this circumstance, including engaging lessons or video demonstrations that are still online right now.
Thank you. Thank you. Nate, we're going to go back to the physical health of our students' lives. What are some benefits for consistent exercise or using a daily exercise log?
Yeah, all right. Now we're in my world. The effects of physical exercise on the overall wellness of the body and mind are well documented and not just theoretical. Exercising can not only be used to maintain physical condition and health, but it stimulates brain function. Endorphins are being released. It's overall stress relief. So even though the world is moving towards a digital space, we are still physical beings, and performing and accomplishing physical tasks can provide great momentum for achievement in many other domains as well. I often advocate for early morning exercises just because of the momentum that it can provide. You get this done, and then you feel like you can tackle whatever else, and then that kind of just continues to snowball. Having daily workouts in a physical fitness log helps create routine and discipline. And it's tangible evidence of that accomplishment. You got it right in front of you. You did this today. These fitness logs can provide people with exercise options, and it's a template for physical wellness. Now, I create some for my students, but if they find the work that I suggest boring or not fun, for whatever reason, I don't know why they would think that, I employ them to create their own physical fitness log with alternative exercises or activities that provide physical benefits.
All right. Thank you, Ellie and Nate, kind of focusing around the academics and how we can kind of enhance our students' engagement. Stephanie, let's talk a little bit more about Logos' approach to helping students through the pandemic, especially how we shifted our approach and what challenges and successes that we've seen. So what services do Logos provide that are different from what you would call a traditional typical school?
So Logos is unique because we are an academic and a therapeutic school. So in terms of academics, Ellie has spoken to our individualized instruction. So all of our students have an individualized education plan. So we are meeting our students where they are academically and working with them to fill those gaps and, get them, like I said, as caught up to grade level or as, where they have the ability to be academically. We are an 11-month school year, so our students are in school, longer than a typical school year. So they're being educated, throughout the school year. Our classroom sizes are small. So, we have a 6-to-1 student teacher ratio in the classroom. So that allows for a lot of that individual instruction and flexibility and accommodations with different types of learning styles. In terms of the therapy, we have 10 therapists that have a caseload of about 10 to 12 students on each of their caseloads. The therapists are there every day, so they are an active part of student life and the school community throughout the school day, so students can get support as needed throughout the school day. All of our students receive a minimum of 1 hour of individual therapy a week and 2 hours of group therapy a week. And I think another thing, that Logos offers that a lot of other schools may not have the opportunity to offer is credit recovery. So because we have an extended school year, our students are able to recover either if they have missed out on earning some credits, due to being out of school for a period of time due to mental health reasons, or if they didn't pass the class, they have that opportunity to recover those credits, and they can graduate as soon as they earn their 24 credits in, the necessary core subjects. So they're eligible, to graduate throughout the school year.
That is amazing. Ellie, would you have anything that you would like to add to that?
just I teach II, so my individualized instruction classroom I think is pretty special in our building. Students are able to work at their own level, at their own pace, if they're not in a mainstream classroom. And so if they're really struggling, they're able to get those academic supports that they need. Something that I focus on with my kids is advocating not only for their educational needs, but also their social emotional needs. And that's really worked into our curriculum in my classroom. So everyone, if something isn't working for a student academically or social emotionally, we work on how to advocate for yourself, how to communicate with adults, how to communicate with your peer to get your needs met. Because meeting needs is really going to push academic and emotional growth as an individual.
Yeah, definitely. Stephanie, what approach has Logos taken with students while the building has been closed?
So basically, we have moved our learning platform, into the students' homes. We've used the word flexibility a lot in this conversation because Logos is very flexible, in terms of meeting students' individual needs. So we provided every student that didn't have access to a tablet, we provided them a tablet so that they could, have their virtual learning experience. Through community resources, we helped them get access to Wi-Fi if they didn't have access to Wi-Fi. We have some students, that are not comfortable with doing their schoolwork on, technology. So we have mailed them their work. So really, we have worked with each individual student and their family to figure out, what the best means for them learning virtually looks like, and we provided that opportunity for them.
All right. And Nate, do you have anything to add to that or follow up?
To keep the students involved and feeling a bit of that love and care that Logos is best at, the constant teachers therapist interaction is maintained, as well as activities like virtual prom, virtual graduation. We did a field day, and we also had daily and weekly challenges that connect one another by showing how we are, although apart, we are still together. And I feel like many students will remember and appreciate the connection that we were able to, provide.
Essentially making a community without the community being nearby. Stephanie, how do the therapists engage with students typically, and how do they do it now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when students were in the building, like I said, the therapists are there the entire school day. So they, are actively involved with the students, during the day when they're at school. And they were receiving their 1 hour of individual therapy. And then the therapists provide the group therapy as well twice a week. Since we've gone virtual, the therapists are continuing to meet with their students for their individual sessions. And again, the therapists have individualized that to meet the students' comfort level, and needs. And so some students like that face-to-face, either Zoom or Skype or FaceTime. Some students, prefer phone calls or texting. So, the therapist has worked with the student, to figure out what works best for them. And then we have weekly Zoom group meetings that students participate in as well.
All right. Robert, as a member of the clinical team, how do you stay in touch with the students that you work with?
Therapists at Logos are essentially a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotline. So communicating with students outside of the building wasn't that far off of what things looked like when we were back in the building on occasion. Since we've been out of the building, I've been utilizing platforms that allow face-to-face interactions, and that has really improved, I think, my ability to get into the home and to help out in situations, especially in crisis situations where families may be dealing with something that is escalated or heightened emotion. But getting the opportunity to actually see and make eye contact with the client seems to be more productive in trying to get that connection and also get that student to get to a place where they can productively problem solve. So I know from my in my experience with these platforms, I will be continuing to utilize these face-to-face programs well into the next school year when we're hopefully back together, because I've found it to be a lot more helpful for me to do my job. So if nothing good has come out of this situation, the ability to get more so into the house during escalated situations has improved, and that'll be something that we take with us going forward, even after this situation is over.
Definitely. That's amazing to hear. First off, I want to be able to thank everyone for joining us today for this conversation. I'd like to thank each one of my panel of experts for this talk. Hopefully, we provided some important and practical advice for parents and community members as they continue to support adolescents through these difficulties and life changes that COVID-19 has brought us so unexpectedly. I wish everyone a safe rest of the summer and a safe return to the school in the fall. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.